Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So we're continuing our reading of the Constitution of the Society of the Jesuits. It is quite long, but very unique. I wanted to study all of the different Catholic orders, see what they're all about, so we can better understand their history, their philosophy, their ideology, and more. Now, what's interesting here, in this section, it talks about tests of humility and how one is to do an abnegation of oneself through performing humble and lowly tasks such as working in the kitchen, cleaning the house, and services that kind of revolve around that. Now, what I found really interesting is how in here it says whichever tasks offends your sensibilities more, you should seek to do that task. So let's say you really think you're high and mighty and you're above cleaning or cleaning the kitchen. Well, you should do that task so that you become more humble and less prideful and arrogant and haughty, right? And the priests are the ones doing this. They are put through these tests. Now, there was an interesting note here that I think you'll find interesting as well. It says, when someone goes to the kitchen to do the cooking, or to help him who is doing it, with great humility he must obey the cook in all things pertaining to his office, by showing him always complete obedience to any other superior. And then he goes on to mention that there's genuine obedience, and that if you're genuinely obedient, you don't look at who you're offering the service to, but rather you uphold the duty and do it for the sake of God. They also note here that you should readily obey the cook, the janitor, everyone who is commanding you, as if it was Jesus Christ telling you. So they want you to obey the command as if it was Jesus commanding you, and to do it for the sake of God. These tests of humility, so that you can become closer to being an ideal priest. Now, I found that to be quite unique, and that they don't want you to think you're above the cook of the house in terms of taking these orders. Now, there's another interesting point here, that they tell the cook to not request by saying, "Can you?" but to rather say in a modestly commanded way, "Do this or do that." And I found that to be very unique, because instead of saying, "Hey, can you do this?" that's a request, right? Instead of say, "Hey, do this, I need you to do this, do that," that's a command. And I like that it highlighted the difference between a request and a command, because a request leaves room for you to say, "No, I can't," when a command urges you to do it. And that was the nuance he went at. And so the priest is going to be a helper of the cook, or whatever position he likes to go to, so that he can become a better person. And that you should heed the order from your superior that is placed over you as an authority. I found that to be very unique. They have a cool note here as well. To request and to command, each is good. Nevertheless, at the beginning one is aided more by being commanded than by being requested. Now, that's very interesting, because I've worked in the restaurant industry a lot. And sometimes when you are like in a position of authority and you're like, "Can you do this?" sometimes there's an eye roll. But if you're like, "I need you to go grab that crate of eggs and put them in the walk-in," right? There's a command where someone hears it and sometimes they just do it, right? But sometimes if you're not firm in your command, not saying you have to be belligerent, rude, and stuff like that, but if you just directly give the order, sometimes it gets carried out with less resentment. And I found that to be very unique. Further, what does this say about women who are doing tests of humility to stay home and cook for their family instead of being the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and waltzing around in their stilettos and crushing the testicles of all the men under their control? Kind of puts a lot of respect, I think, upon what cooking does, right? I really like that. It's very unique that they put the cook in a position to teach the priest humility. I like that. Or they don't think they're above the kitchen atmosphere or above the cook. That's a really unique thing that I like. It's very cool. I found that very humbling. And then there's another note here that it says, this same attitude applies to the other lowly duties when someone is helping in them, and likewise, in the same manner to the subordinate officials, who, receiving their authority from the superior, govern the house, and that is like the minister, the sub-minister, or the equivalent officials in colleges. So they're basically trying to train the scholastics, the priests, and whatnot to work on their humility. Remember, they told the scholastics to go door to door begging, to really need the people to feed them, and that they, by doing this, are imitating the societies, the Jesuit societies' first members, right? And this constitution was written by Father Ignatius in the 15th century and approved by the Roman Council. So what we saw here thus far is they really are focusing on spiritual progress of their members, and to recognize that this life is transitory and that they need to become humble and offer their services to others. Remember, they also had duties where they had to go to the hospitals and tend the sick. So tending the sick, begging, and helping the cooks and the janitors and cleaning and stuff like that. So they're really trying to snap that I'm better than you attitude. So the women who read this, I feel, even though this is a task for men, to make the men more humble who are going into their order, I feel that some women would benefit from this as well, especially those with the really long dinosaur nails, heavily make-upped, fake eyelashes, Botox, plastic surgery, Gucci bags, a dog in their purse. These types who just think they're above, let's say, a Guatemalan immigrant who cleans houses for a living, right? There's this sort of, we're better than you because we don't have to work. And they become more of like, men gotta do this and men gotta do that. Some of the worst catty feminists are the ones who don't know what it's like to cook a whole course meal for a banquet or a family, or what it feels like to keep a nice, clean, tidy house if you have a maid, a nanny, or they just don't do it. They spend hours and hours on their makeup. So even though this is for men, I still feel that the feminists could learn something from this and maybe get inspired to stop looking down upon women who cook and stop thinking of the kitchen as a plantation, but rather a testing ground of humility. And I really enjoyed that example of, you need to give obedience for the sake of giving the obedience, and that you don't need to think you're above obeying someone who's trying to lead you when they've been put in the position of it. Now, this isn't talking about an inferior commander in war who's made bad choices, or a really bad elected official who doesn't know how to govern. Rather, this is getting at a more niche nuance, I feel, of what does it mean when someone is told to be the one to tell you what to do, and how you shouldn't always be so antagonistic towards them, and instead you should do what they say as long as it's not dangerous or haram, that you should respect their authority and accept that their will is what's going to help you get the job done. and that you should put your ego aside and get that done in certain contexts. Very unique. Very unique training program thus far that they talk about.